Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host, Joe Thompson. Co-host for tonight could not be here, John Finch. So he laid that all in my lap. Helmet strap. We can bring you guys a good show tonight. With me, I have two very awesome gentlemen. First one is Keith Dixon. He dabbles in conspiracy theories, anything from left field to shortstop. He'll keep you on your toes. The next guest we have, his name is Brad. He'll have to tell you his last name.
Would be Stagliano. It's Italian.
Yep. I didn't want to butcher it, so that's the pronunciation. Gentlemen, so good to have you on tonight. So awesome for you to be here. Tonight we're going to talk about conspiracies. All right. We talked a little bit about the show beforehand, so they kind of know what to expect. But the first I want to touch on is a little snip I found, and it's called Queen Elizabeth I was a man. Some believe Queen Elizabeth I died as a child, and to prevent the end of the royal line, she was replaced with a young boy. This theory is said to explain why the ruler remained chaste throughout her reign. That being said, which one of you wants to take this ball first?
Well, it's probably the strangest one I've heard in recent times. I haven't touched upon it myself. Given sort of, if I had obviously seen that headline, I would have been going, what? And the research would have carried on that little bit further. But just straight off the bat, that's a strange one. But, being said, Paul McCartney died, apparently, in his sports car. They've put another Paul McCartney in for the American tour, voila, and that's why the band broke up. And that's just as, out there. So, I'm processing it, taking it in. Yeah, Brad.
That being said, Brad, let's see what you think on that.
You know what? He's mentioning Paul McCartney. I'm thinking a better conspiracy theory would be probably Keith Richards. Why is he still here? No, seriously. It is interesting because there's that need, I guess, to keep, especially in politics or royal family, or there's a need to kind of keep that facade going, to keep the appearance. So I actually, coming from a more of a objective background, to where I'm not a conspiracy hater, but I'm just not a fill in the blank with fantasy kind of guy. So, I wouldn't put it past at least attempting to do something to, if somebody in the royal family died at birth, to carry that on, and again, it would be interesting to kind of go down that rabbit hole maybe and see if there's anything that kind of precludes itself to maybe something like that actually happens. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, no, I've got to say off the bat that I absolutely hate the royal family, bunch of thieves, and it's just sort of like, so anything's possible. They're corrupt. That's all there is to it. They've been robbing off like us British, since the monarchy. So it's just, there you go.
And I have to say, for me, finding out that information, it wouldn't be no different. Word is that Putin isn't the real Putin, for Russia's sake. There's word that a lot of, as you guys touched on, there's a lot of famous politicians as well as world leaders that have stunt doubles, just because they are in politics. So it wouldn't surprise me that they stuck, a little boy in to kind of fit the role for the Queen Elizabeth role, so it's kind of nice to touch on that for a minute. Apart from that, I'm going to let one of you guys throw another conspiracy in before I touch on my second topic, just to see what one of you guys might have on the back burner.
Keith, you're the conspiracy guy kind of guy, so I will let you take the
The most recent one was, the pictures of like all those guys running alongside the American like jet before it took off. And it was just like they were fleeing the country, fleeing the country. Well, the conspiracy was that was a blown up aircraft. It was just like an inflatable, wasn't the real aircraft. And on the side as well, as you guys well know about numerology and Masonic sort of signs and putting it out there in daylight, so only they know what's going on, but the general public don't read the numbers, don't read the signals. Well, that was slapped all across the side of the plane as well. A supposed inflatable plane, which is sort of backed up by many other things. That an inflatable tank suddenly appears on the internet, and there's inflatable jeeps and inflatable helicopters that you can buy, and it's just like, oh, okay, we've got one going here, and it's a continuous cycle, and it's just something that you can get so drawn into and so set off in a different direction, i.e. UFOs and everything. How long has that been going? And it's just sort of, it sucks you in, and there's no tangible evidence whatsoever. But you get pulled in different directions, and that's a weird one, but worth having a look at.
I'm glad you actually touched on that, because that was most recent. If you don't know, for those of our viewers who are watching at home, there was a thing in the Middle East. I don't remember if it was Afghanistan, Kabul. I don't remember exactly which area, but there was footage released recently of an aircraft, one of the many, that was taking off and was carrying with it not millions, but quite a substantial amount of civilians with it. And as it was taking off, you saw people dropping from the aircraft, and there's a lot of informative people out there who have said that, that is a hoax. That's just trick photography. It's, stuff that's been done before that nobody really cares to take a dabble and, check the information on. So, my only question on that, Keith and Brad, is if something like that happens, how can you get an inflatable to carry that many grown human beings into the air so high? You know what I mean? Like, it just seems.
I guess if you're carrying along that line, that is an inflatable. There's nobody inside, and it's just a load of actors running alongside that plane. If you're, and everything, the world is a stage. Everything's staged. And I don't believe anything that's on the mainstream media. It's just the way I am. I hear things. I don't buy newspapers or watch TV. It's just sort of, it's just one of those things. So when you see these things, you're going to question it. You're going to look into it. Could I really be bothered to see whether that was an inflatable plane? To be honest, no. There's so many other people looking at it, and it didn't deserve my time. So, and there's a lot of these things that come up, and you just sort of think, okay, it'll let you get on with that one. Do you know what I mean? Because it's really, you want to try and deal in facts. You want to try and keep things factual. You can't sort of like go on a tangent believing in myths and theories and, nothing tangible. If there's nothing tangible, then you have to push it to one side. You don't totally shut it down and say, I'm not going to look at that again, because something might come up in the future. There might be a massive UFO hanging over London tomorrow. And I'll be like, so you just sort of, you look at these things, objectively, you look at both sides, you don't just believe the mainstream media, you look at the other side. And that's the point of, growing as a person and understanding where you are and what you are and, what is actually around you in your life in this system that we're given to live in. And when you look at it functionally and about all these things, it's just work, buy, consume, die. And everything that we're given by the mainstream media is just how to do that and encapsulate us into that. And then you've got, the invention of fake news, to hide many things at the time. And so now we're all classed as conspiracy theorists, a word that I hate, a word that is supposedly derived from the CIA. So you've got to sort of take into account that we are just given all this information, and people don't look at the other side. So it's good that there's people that actually do. And no matter how crazy the conspiracy theory is, at least it gives you an option to, think with your common sense. Look at this. Yeah.
Nice. So we've heard a little bit from Keith on that subject. Brad, I'm gonna wheel it over to you, buddy. It's new information. Just to kind of make it clear for the viewers out there, it's new. I kind of sprung this on these gentlemen last minute. I heard great work. Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, Brad, take it off, buddy. Let's see. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so here's where I am going to kind of bring this down a notch a little bit here. And I do like conspiracy theories because I believe they actually serve a purpose in society, because it is a way for us to kind of quality check what we are receiving externally, internally. It's a way for us to be able to filter and decipher, what we are being fed, what we are being told, and I think it's an innate instinct to maintain our freedom. And, so we want to make sure that the information that we are getting, it corresponds with reality. And it corresponds with, making sure that it's for the betterment of everybody, in our society. So, but it's interesting because it's like, Keith is also mentioning being objective and finding the truth. I'm not sure how we get from being objective and finding the truth in terms of inflatable everything, and where does that come from? So there's a little bit of a jump there, maybe like the size, like the Grand Canyon, but that's okay, But I agree with the premise. I do agree with the premise of conspiracy theories, because being able to question is pretty much everything. It's being able to question is maintained the freedoms that we do have, available to us. And it's kept us that way to at least some extent, to whatever varying degrees that we are free. But at the same time, I don't necessarily agree with kind of just filling in the blanks with fantasy.
Exactly.
Things that are conjecture, things that are just like, well, inflatable, but inflatable how? I mean, are there seams? Are you seeing someone with a little bike pump going inflating things? I mean, what are we seeing here?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So you would ask yourself those questions when you're confronted with the information. And so that stuff flashes up in front of you, and you obviously objectively think, you start thinking, well, how's that bloody possible? Do you know what I mean? There was people hanging off the bloody thing. Do you know how are you going to hang off? And so your mind's just constantly working. And like I said, you just sort of like, you have to tread carefully, because there are so many, out there. There really are.
So that being said, I have to ask, do you think it's out of the realm of possibilities that someone would go to that length to make something that just, I guess?
Well, they said they went to the moon, so hey.
I mean, we can definitely touch on that here in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, I guess it's all, whether it's trick photography, trick video, inflatable aircraft, whatever the case may be. The question still lingers. It's just from what people see, you got real people hanging off of real shit in the middle of the air. So I mean, it's half a dozen and six in the other. You just really gotta, I guess, to touch on Keith, you gotta look for yourself. That's kind of what we try to let others, know. If you can't think out of the side of the box for yourself, you're always going to get tripped into one side or the other, whether you believe in that said path or you believe in something else that, you were taught growing up. It's just something that you have to take and run with no matter what you decide.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like indoctrination, because, like you mentioned, in terms of what we believe, and indoctrinations, it tends to be, it has kind of become a 5-cent word. Unfortunately, it's become kind of just easily thrown around, and, well, you are indoctrinated. It's kind of like this put down. You want to know what the truth about indoctrination is? If you weren't indoctrinated, Keith, you wouldn't know how to get up out of bed in the morning, put your shoes on, and go wipe your ass and brush your teeth. none of us would know. That's in the byproduct of indoctrination, is knowing about our environment and our world and being able to, correspond with that world. So it's just indoctrination is what we know.
But
Anything that's evil.
But that's the information that we're given,
Yeah,
and
of course.
So we just sort of learn by that, but we never question that there's the other side of the fence or the other side of the coin, which there always has been, and we're so sucked in from mainstreamed, from the start, from our schooling and everything else, and we're given everything on the news and in our television programs that are so twisted by design to twist us by design. So questioning everything is a good thing, but sometimes you can be questioning the wrong things because there's more important things to hand. We all know that there's corruptions in wars, and there's always a reason why the leader's overthrown. And if you look hard enough at the subject matter, you're going to come out with stuff that you weren't told by your BBC. A totally different narrative from what you're told from your BBC, but you've got to go look. You've got to be prepared to look on the other side of the fence. But people do take it a little bit too far sometimes.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. I agree. So, I mean, the whole common base for conspiracy theories is they're trying to cover up something bigger. I mean, if you think about it, all the greatest conspiracies are designed and blueprinted to cover up something even bigger that the world's been paying too much attention to, i.e. the media, i.e. social media, Facebook, whatever. So that's something kind of neat to think into as well. It's like we touched on before. If you don't have a brain enough to think outside the box and actually look into certain ideologies or methodologies, or in this case, conspiracy theories, you're probably not going to get very far on your own. So that being said, I've got another curveball for you, gentlemen. It's another headline I'd like to read, give you a little bit of info about it. Amelia Earhart. So for the viewers who don't know, she was pretty much noted for making the full trip around the Earth. Again, another conversation for another story. Whether or not it's flat or globe, we'll let Keith take that off on future episodes. But
you and me, buddy, you and me.
A little bit with Amelia Earhart. She's been shrouded in mystery ever since it disappeared in 1937. Now, while it's widely believed that she ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean, some also think that she landed by mistake on a deserted island and was eventually eaten by 3-foot-long coconut crabs that were inhabiting those shores at the time. So, that's a little bit about that theory. I'll start this one. Amelia Earhart. That's American history, world history in itself. Back when they were trying to see how far we could take aircraft, we tried so many times to travel, see how much of the Earth they could see. She was one of the first ones to make that trip. Again, back in 1937, she was famous for going missing. And some say that she never really went missing. She was caught, in various public places around Europe, around the States. And then there's the other side of the coin. She was noted for, maybe she crashed her aircraft into the ocean somewhere. Maybe she landed on a deserted island and now allegedly eaten by 3-foot-long crabs. I'm gonna let one of you guys touch on it next. Who wants to take this bet?
I'll take it. And other than me wanting to go to Red Lobster right now, because now I'm hungry a little bit, but ultimately, it's interesting because I think the majority of the time when anyone is even in the air, when they're flying, mechanical problems, the potential of running out of gas, especially with a small engine, plane or something like that, would probably be the probability. But it is interesting to also ascertain what would happen if she was going to be in a crash landing and knew that she was not going to make it and had to set down on an island or something that she was not familiar with. And then if that did happen, how long would she be able to survive? How would she survive? If she actually landed safely enough to survive the crash. So I don't think that there's much credential to that in any respect or form, but most likely she just went boom. She probably just lost it somewhere. So probably it's probably not much there, but it is interesting to entertain.
Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, it's something I sort of touched upon many years ago for obvious reasons. And it's just sort of like, yeah, I mean, she took off, obviously on her mission to do exactly what you said on the place where she thought she was at the time. And yeah, so I just sort of like, as Brad said, it's just like sheer speculation what happened. One would hope that it was like so quick, you would hate to think that she actually had to put down somewhere and never got found. As far as sort of like seeing her after her death and it being, they said that about Elvis, and they still are today, probably. I haven't checked recently, but this sort of like stuff it continues. It sort of snowballs. But and as the years go by, all you're left with is the true evidence that she took off that day.
Yep. So, I mean, that being said, there always begs the question. Nobody was ever found. This is pre-World War II era. 1937 was the supposed date. So, that span probably lasted 2 years. I don't remember the exact start date, but it was pre-World War II. Those of us.
I mean, she would have been flying over an incredible vast amount of water, which even now we can't get a radar to or anything like that. So don't even say satellites. But it's just sort of there are these far reaches of the seas that if she went down there, then they're never going to find her. Vast amounts of ocean.
Yeah, I think that we're kind of stuck with what we have as far as written history or as far as the folklore, the story. I think that's kind of where it stops, unfortunately, because there's just not much more after that. And then I will kind of segue a little bit though, because this kind of brings us to an interesting juncture because in terms of recent history. I think it was like the late 90s, early 2000s when we started to realize that a lot of the stories, a lot of what we've been taught through, history and through the educational system, that not everything is fact. Not everything is factual. In fact, a lot of what we've been handed was folklore, and this brings us to something interesting because this is where I think conspiracy theories do come into play. And I think that's where they serve a purpose is to, okay, so now we've got to go back to these points in history, these things that have been taught and articulated to us in kind of a curriculumized educational system.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I think it's maybe we should kind of go back and not necessarily fill in the blanks with campfire fantasy and Sasquatch and this and that and everything, but at the same time, I think we kind of need to take a good look at what has been fictionalized and what is actually where we may be able to pick up where things were left off and find, what may have actually transpired through history instead of just passing along folklore as truth.
Very true. Very true.
I definitely, agree with that. It's like you said, it's pre-war era, and there was so much damage and carnage in World War II, followed by Korean War, Vietnam War, so many countless wars afterwards. So
War.
yeah, it's hard to say, what truly lied behind some of those, few conspiracies, such as the old Goldies, Amelia Earhart getting lost, there, whether or not there is a Bermuda Triangle out past, the Caribbean islands, nobody ever really knows.
And
So
there's a conspiracy theory about that might interest you, and it's like that's where NASA land all their like disposed rockets that they're not really sending to wherever, and so it just goes on, intensifies. They sort of like, loads of aircrafts go missing there, but there's also this, that's where they chuck all NASA stuff, that's why you can't go there, that's why it's so bloody dangerous. And so you gotta look at these things objectively, because some of them sort of like but the oldies, they're definitely like ones to sort of like ponder.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure.
I was doing a little bit of research, kind of. That's why my camera was acting all crazy, because I found another theory that will go right up both of your alley, and I think this might spark a pretty genuine debate. We touched on, I know Keith mentioned satellites a few minutes ago. Are both of you familiar with the Black Knight satellite?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, so just a little bit about it. There is word that the Black Knight satellite is secretly an alien spacecraft, and it says conspiracy theories are wary of a space object that has become known as the Black Knight satellite. And while experts at NASA insist it's just space junk, some believe it's an ancient alien spaceship. So, I mean, that throws us into, I don't want to touch on this specific subject in the way Keith is like thinking, because there's only nothing to do with that. But I believe there could potentially be an alien race. I mean, what do you guys think?
Brad?
Okay. You know what? I would tend to kind of not necessarily agree with the whole satellite thing, but I do agree with the alien race aspect, because I think we would be foolish, and we would also be very, very naive to think that we are the only living beings in existence. And this is the one area that I will go down the rabbit hole, because there has been too much. There has been so much throughout the last like 40, 50, 60, 70 years of things like sightings and Area 51s and things, like areas where things have been, maybe conducted, things have been going on and kind of maybe even hidden. But you know what? I think that there's too much of that out there, kind of, pre-internet and everything, to where I don't think we are alone. And I don't mean that like in, X Factor type of way, but I think that, we're biologically, we're not the only living creatures, even on other planets, because other planets that would have, and we're not going into the planets are imaginary and government, and I'm not going into that. No, don't slap me. It's all good.
I will say only because I see Keith antsy in his chair.
I know.
Let him touch on this, because if I don't, his head might explode, and then we won't have a guest for our another segment. So, Keith,
where'd you go?
I'm interested to hear this, my friend. Let me hear it.
Guys, listen, they're pushing it hard. They are pushing it so hard recently. And yeah, when you're sort of like, it's just. I've looked really, really hard and intensely at this a long time ago, and looked at all the videos and the old guy out on his farm. He's had people down there, and the first incidents with Betsy and Bob, and they're in the field, and then 2 hours have gone by, and every sort of like angle, and I just sort of like, and it's sort of like I had to put it to one side, because there is too much of it. It was too much of it, and all the time that you're looking at this stuff, you're waiting for disclosure. You know, Stephen Greer, and you're waiting for that disclosure, and you're really thinking the next minute, and you're looking up at the skies constantly, and you're seeing this stuff, and you're not quite understanding because you've not looked at the skies before. You know, this is the first time you're looking up in your life. You're waiting for these aliens to come down. They've got to be there. There's Area 51. It's just got to be true, and the U.S. government are going to have to release the documents. They're going to be out any day. They're going to be out any day. And these documents came out from England. And then to make the matters even worse, they had black marked big sections of these documents. So the conspiracy theorists are just like, oh my God, what are they hiding there? And, you know, so there was a disclosure to a certain degree. But you know, and it's just sort of, but when I truly think about this, and because I know that space is fake, and I'm certain space is fake. There has got to be, you know, if any tangible evidence, you know, and I pushed it to one side and not shut the door. And I thought, well, if it could come from anywhere, it might come from another hole in the sort of thinking that I have, that, you know, is obviously the flat Earth. But so that being said, that's my only possibility that they could actually be with us, is if they're within the same realms as us. You know, and it's just sort of, and when you do touch across those realms, it's everything's perfectly simple. And you know, anything sort of possible that you're actually thinking about. It focuses your mind, and you really do sort of, you know, you have to think, you know, with a little bit of clarity when you're down the road. So as far as I am, with my understanding of where we are and what we are, you know, like I said, you know, that alien life, yeah, you'd be foolish to think that we were the only beings. You know, that would be just, you know, not thinking logically. So yeah, I mean, I hold that thought, but maybe put it in a different light, maybe research other areas and possibilities.
That being said, you know, from both of you gentlemen, there's so much evidence, um, kind of, that could lay in both sides of the spectrum. Um, you know, as of a couple of examples, the pyramids, they are gold capped for the sole reason of early electricity. Apart from that, you have all of these different societies recording all of these different sightings of greater beings. And then I didn't want to dig into this because it's such a touchy portion of conspiracy theories, but I've also dabbled in different religions, and they all have basic similarities. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, is it really out of the realm of possibilities that space and otherworldly beings could be a thing?
You know, I mean, maybe these, you know, the early races were seeing the creators as they still visited us, and, you know, nurtured us and led us on our way. Maybe this is what they saw. Once they were ready to leave, they left and come back time to time. You know, you've got to sort of like, there's probably so many avenues of it's, you know, explaining, you know, the past. You just got to be prepared to think outside the box and go down those avenues, you know, wherever it takes you. You know.
Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think this is definitely that one esoterical avenue to where, you know, I mean, we cannot really pinpoint our past outside. I mean, you have religion, which is belief based. Yeah, that is faith based.
Who me?
But there, I'm sorry.
Did you say I did?
Oh, okay. But yeah, it's faith based, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have an origin of factuality. So, you know, I mean, what somebody believes has to come from somewhere. That belief system has to have propagated. You know, so there is a strong, distinct possibility that, you know, the people that were our ancestors, before modern civilization, they may have had encounters that, that we're just now mimicking with Hollywood, and we're just mimicking with, little green men, and it is interesting, and this is the part of conspiracy theories I really do like, because you know what, this does titillate the imagination a little bit, and it's a little bit more, childlike in the respect of kind of before indoctrination and kind of when we were kids using our imaginations. And this is an interesting thing. It's kind of a question for you, Keith.
Yeah.
Do you think that our infant imaginations, our infant minds and our child minds before we started school, before we started the indoctrination of learning, do you think that we may have been more connected in a universal way to a greater source, and then that was dulled down, or that was stopped because of indoctrination, because of our educational system? Do you think that that's a possibility, that we had a more of a etherical knowledge pre-education?
As a child, you're just like a sponge, and the sort of free thinking aspects you got when you're spinning around the front room annoying your mother, isn't really sort of a focused mind. You're onto one thing, onto the next. I've just got two puppies, and they're exactly the same, But it's just sort of, it's just, when, if they were left to their own devices, if they hadn't had all that information thrust upon them, and this is how it is, and blah blah blah, then you got a free thinking mind, and the children should be accepted into schooling on the, how they are as a child. And everybody's classed in the same bracket and all thrust into the same class, and nobody's taken care of for their individuality or their certain skills. We're just trained to be good citizens, and that's our schooling. And when you come out of school, you're really not quite sure what you're meant to do, because no one tells you you've got to work, buy, consume, die for the rest of your life.
Right.
Live with it. And so we all find our own way through it, and at some certain point, we start questioning things around us. So it's just sort of at that point you start realizing, that you're in deep. And if you're going to find your own happiness, you're going to it's going to be a battle. Every day is going to be a battle. Why is that? Why should that be, when our grandfathers and our grandfathers paid taxes for a better life for their children, but now they're taking everything. They're taking sort of almost half your wages away. They're taking everything. They've taken, the economic belt has been pushed so tight, that the mum and dad are both having two jobs, and they're still having trouble. I think it was 450 homes in this country last year were just taken away from people because they can't afford their mortgage. It's a crazy world that we're sort of designed to live in, and we're losing all the time.
Oh my gosh, I live in California, where a 2-bedroom house is about 700,000. So yeah, trust me, it's out of control. The system is out of control, very much so.
The system, yeah.
That means I have to ask this question without digging into the depths, because I know where it's going to go when I ask it. That being said, from both of you gentlemen, do you think that the conspiracy theory that this is all a quote unquote matrix could be put into clarification?
I think so. That is something where, okay, of all of them, I mean, you can take all the movies in the past like 50, 60 years. The Matrix is probably the truest telling and foretelling in terms of the system that we are a part in. The whole thing is actually extremely accurate. I mean, the movie itself is fantasy based, but in terms of the philosophy, it's dead on. It's dead on. I mean, the machines, I mean, that's the system. We are here for this. We are the batteries, like when they're in the cocoons and everything. That was the reality they discovered. We are the batteries that are supporting that system. It's us. It's off our backs. It's our hard work. It's us killing ourselves and living shortened lifespans because you know what? We have to kick our own ass every freaking day. It's for the system. It's to keep everything going. So yeah.
But what happened to our individual freedoms? Where's my castle and horses? Where it's just the whole thing is unjust, and people stand up for their rights, and try to have that freedom of speech and freedom of thought. But you don't get the chance to have freedom of thought because you're so embroiled in the rat race and so embroiled with the little things in between. So when you actually get a break in your life to sit back and think how us three have about stuff like that, we've been very lucky to question what's around us, because most people don't get that opportunity, and they're walking blind into whatever situation is put in front of them, and they accept it for what it is. The BBC have got a lot to answer for, for many, many years. And the same propaganda comes from your, news shows out there. It's scripted. Life is scripted. Hollywood. What has everyone made out of? Hollywood. It's all a spell. We've been spellbinded since we've been children. We've been, that has been our indoctrination. What they show you in the movies is preparing you for what's to come. So it gets into your psyche, and you're quite expecting the next pandemic or whatever it may be, or catastrophe on a plane that might hit a building or whatever. It was all in the movies before these situations. So you've got to ask yourself, are they just like flashing that wand and mixing with your mind just so we were accepting? Oh yeah, that stuff happens. How do I know that happens? Because I saw it on the movies. Oh, and I also saw it on the news last night. It's got to be real.
Life, or life imitate art. There we go. That's that question.
So it just kind of leaves the fact. I touched on this on our last show. Keith knows. So it kind of just leaves the fact. I heard a quote from Denzel Washington, as a matter of fact, and he was just like, "Whoever's got the story first is the one that everybody huddles to. They don't necessarily care anymore that it's factual. They just." The first story that they can get their hands on and sell is the one that sells. And instead of just fact checking anymore, everybody's just like, oh, that's got to be true because that's what they tell us. So, I mean, there's so many things, whether it's, are we a matrix? Is the world flat? Which we'll touch on later in coming episodes.
Yeah, that's what we're going to like.
Yeah, it's such a great thing, to have good, honest debates, especially when there's so many conspiracy theories that will take you down so many different paths. So that's definitely awesome to touch base on. This is the part of the segment where I give you two free reign to kind of either bring up a conspiracy theory for us three to debate, or ask me questions throughout this whole show that piqued your interest that I haven't exactly touched on. So whichever one of you want to go first, I'll let you go first, and then we'll just kind of go to the next person after that.
Keith, I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, no, I'll let you go again, bro, because like you're obviously sort of like you've looking at this stuff, and you're probably quite interested in sort of what I've got to say again on many subjects. So I'll chuck it over to you. I hope it's one I'm relevant or aware of. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of when you sort of look at so many conspiracies and then you pull away for a little while, you just sort of like it just goes down into the data system. You may not remember every single fact, but the information used to be. This is another thing that we really must touch on. Okay, so I'll take over. I'm sorry. Is the fact that we've been so
You know,
It's so censored on the internet. You know, when I was looking at the subjects I was looking at, 10 years ago, it was freely available. And the next night you were coming from work and you push the thing, and up on the recommended would be all these new shows, all along the same lines of what you'd been looking at the night before. And it was all there. All the information. You could be into government documents one night and pharmaceutical documents the next night. It was a varied thing. I could go and search anything about anything, and it was so free. And then they started censoring everything, and then everything started disappearing, and channels started to be, blocked and taken away and demonetized. And so that is just so apparent. And it's got to be something that you guys have noticed along the way, which is not really, it just shows how confined things have got. Even in the research of trying to research a conspiracy nowadays about the planes, and you're going to run into problems. We Google everything. It's really not the place to be looking for information. May I say DuckDuckGo or something like along those sort of lines would serve you far better. So there are other search engines which still give you a lot of information. I tend to get a lot of my information off of Telegram. There's lots of interesting channels on there, and BitChute is kind of uncensored as well. So there are still places where you can get, the other side, and not this controlled place where we've been thrust with, i.e. Facebook, which is absolutely abysmal. And fact checkers, these new things that have come online to stop us doing anything else in our lives, or it's just crazy. It's harder to get information now, a lot harder. And that's the thing that people face with when you tell them about something, they really can't cross-check it anymore.
I think before I pass it off to Brad for his rebuttal, I think that it has a lot to do with cancel culture, especially past 2020 into 2021. We've heard a lot of, again, the quote, cancel culture. There's so much that has to do with the media, again, so much to do with the media outlets, transfers of powers within the upper areas of our government. But Brad, I mean, what do you got for me, my friend?
Frick, a little side note here. I think there are some of your viewers that are probably going to be a little disappointed. They're probably expecting this, and it's it's not, because
I have to add, the past two shows that we have put out, they're friendly debates. All of our shows try to be super friendly debates, but as Keith saw last time, they tend to get a little bit heated because we're all so passionate about what we've absorbed over the past, for me 30 years, Keith a lot more, for you, a lot more. It's just when you get that much information together, sometimes it gets a little bit warm.
So yeah, when you're 800 years old like me, I mean, my God,
I mean, if you sat behind Jesus in second grade, there could be a reason behind that.
Yeah, that's true. True. No, what I will say is that I think we are in a very interesting and unique time. I mean, we are literally at a crossroads right here, very much so. Because never before, I mean, you think about it, the internet, as far as we know it, as far as our usage of it in terms of the general public, as far as that goes, the internet's pretty much a teenager at this point, late teens, early 20s, and we're starting to kind of, find ourselves at a point where we've got an availability, we've got a plethora of information at our fingertips, and it's instantaneous, but then again, that comes with its own problem. Because now our information is not just controlled in terms of, the media, in terms of watching TV and radio, but it's also, it's also wildly out of control and has kind of lost its foundational point of objectivity, because now everything can be infused with conspiracy. that may or may not be factual. It may just be fodder for the imagination. It could also be curriculumized to where, or agendaized to where it's specific to, a group or a party's idealisms and theologies in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. So it's very hard. I mean, this is an interesting juxtaposition that we're at right now because, what do we do with all of this information now? How do we filter it? How do we decipher? The one thing here's my view. This is how, going forward, I will, this is how Keith will, get to know me a little bit more too, in terms of how I process things. To me, I think of it like a pendulum. Okay. A pendulum has 3 points. It's going to be dead center. It's going to be extreme left, extreme right. Okay. So when you swing that pendulum, it's going to go extreme, dead center, and then extreme. Okay. And how I process information personally is I like to be dead center, because dead center is an objective view and you can draw from either extremes. So somebody who's just more favorable towards, okay, the government's, everything's a lie, everything is corrupt, human nature is corrupt, so then therefore nothing is true, nothing is believable, it's all, we're being duped somehow, some way, somehow, so then there's going to be a tendency to be at an extreme, and then the rest of the information is drawn from that extreme. And so it's kind of objectivity loses its value when you are based at an extreme. So to the best of my ability, I like to stay at a neutral point, so that way I can draw from either to where I can make the best appropriate decision. Because here's the thing. If and no offense, but if someone's just completely spun out like a rabid meth head with conspiracy theories, it's kind of a disempowered place to be. Because then again, because you can't distinguish, because then you've given up that ability to distinguish, because everything's a conspiracy. There's nothing that's true. So you don't have you kind of give up that ability to ascertain, and be able to filter, the information. So, never mind what you think is bullshit and what you think is just, organized control. Because there's no distinguishing it. Then it's all just organized control, and there's nothing is true. And how do you know you're even breathing and alive? Because it's like it becomes kind of just a giant head trip, in a way.
Keith, I'm gonna let you not only respond to that, but I feel like you have one or two more rebuttals for what he just said. And then I have a question for you both that'll kind of either ring a bell or it'll kind of leave you guessing for a minute or two. So, Keith, go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, it's just sort of, I think along a similar lines. It's just sort of like there's in my mind, it's like for real. We're playing this game for real, and everything around us, you've got to sort of take it for what it is, and we know what the main pointers are. Why everybody in the world is unhappy. We know why we're all, fighting for the money every day. So these sort of things aren't conspiracies. These are facts. These are your life. This is what you're living. That ain't no conspiracy. That's real. And so there's everything that is around us, and you've got to ask yourself, why are we suffering so bad? And it leads you to the answers, because your governments are corrupt. They're lying to you. They always have been, and the reason they're doing that, well, the answers are clear. So these aren't conspiracies. These are facts, and there's the paperwork. There's some history. After all, that only the winners write history, so the rest get scrubbed. So it's very hard to pinpoint bits and pieces, because all we've got is what's presented to us. But you've got to understand that the main point that any of us would be questioning anything is because there's something wrong. And if there's something wrong, then you're an intelligent person to be thinking and questioning why, and not just accepting it and carrying on. So, there's important, stuff out there, but our lives is not a conspiracy. And what's happening to us and what we've been put through is not a conspiracy. It is real. And there's people fighting for our freedoms. There's people out there marching in Australia today, getting taken down by the police hard for just trying to speak out and fight for their families, fight for their children, fight for their freedom. And in London, there's another one coming up on the 28th of March, 1 o'clock, central London, Trafalgar Square. And there's going to be over 1 million people there. But does the press ever get to see that? No, they don't. They don't see the millions of people and how we shut down London. I was on every big march last year, fighting for your freedom, your children's freedoms, my grandchildren's. I've got 5 grandchildren's, 3 kids. And this is what a reality is. Conspiracy this, conspiracy that, but you got something that people would say, oh no, that's a conspiracy about your government. No, it's not. You're living it. Time people to wake up.
One point to that. Sorry, if I could just add one quick point.
Oh no, you're right.
This is going to seem kind of left field, and it's going to seem like, what does this have to do with the price of tea in China? But it does parlay into this. Okay, it makes sense, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on what we're on to right now, and it'll make sense why I'm asking this. Okay, I work in the financial industry. That's my main gig. Okay, and it's because I have been around the industry, because I have become aware of it, it's kind of clued me into certain things. And one thing I want to say is not everything is a conspiracy. Some things are, a lot of it is actually structural. Things are actually built into our system. And it's not a matter of conspiracy. It's just a matter of being aware and cognizant of these things that, if we are aware of these things, we could actually hedge the system to our benefit, not in a selfish way, but we can hedge them to have a better quality of life if we understand these things. And one thing that kind of clued me in, I discovered this, and I was just like, I realized we don't really pay attention very closely. We don't pay attention. I mean, here we are digging so deep in these conspiracy theories, quote unquote, and yet we miss the very finite things that could actually improve the quality of our lives if we were aware of them and how to actually hedge them to our benefit. One thing I'm going to ask both of you, it's going to seem like out of nowhere, it has nothing to do with anything here, but the word mortgage. What does the word mortgage mean to you?
You've been lent a property.
Okay.
You're never going to own that property, ever.
Right. That's an aspect.
That property wasn't brought with, funds or money. It's just numbers on a screen. That's what it means to me.
Okay. And Joseph, what does that mean to you?
Oh man, I don't know the definite because I've looked into it a little bit, but it's just nothing more than paying the bank back money that they had given you to purchase your home and or land in the first place.
Okay. No one is wrong here. But I will tell you, so this is where the power of paying attention to words, and this is where I'm trying to go with this, because things are more systematic than I think we realize. The word mortgage, it's a prefix and suffix, mort and gauge. Okay. Mort, what does that sound like? Oh, let's see, mortality, morbidity, death. Okay. Gauge, which is the suffix, would be technically an agreement or a measurement. In terms of a mortgage, in terms of financial language, that would be a measurement of time. So basically, and it's also is an agreement, a signed agreement. So when you are signing a mortgage, you are signing an agreement until death. That's what that word actually means. And that is pertaining to the amortization of the interest in the loan, compound interest, meaning that what you are signing is debt that's never meant to be paid off. It's meant to outlive you. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up, and I just like, what was he talking about? What's he talking about mortgages? But at the same time, what this is really pertaining to is just the way that the system is leveraged. And it comes back to the matrix, and it comes back to the understanding that we are basically here to support the system. You know, we are more valuable to a mortgage company, completely indebted to them and defaulted to them, than them never having known our name because we don't have a loan with them. So, you know, it's just about leveraging. And if you understand these things, and it's like, wait a minute, I need to put myself in a gainful position to be able to pay these things off, to get out from under them, then you start climbing, you start climbing, you start climbing. And then to a certain extent, you are able to buy your freedom to a small extent. Now, you're never able to actually buy it, though, because real estate, real is of the land.
The land.
Land.
You get into the whole aspect of debt, and then you become, you know, down that rabbit hole of debt free, that whole lifelong battle. So,
Exactly.
so I have to ask both of you gentlemen, to kind of round it out a little bit. Ever since everybody found out that you can edit information on the infamous site Wikipedia. Now it has been known that you can edit information on the internet as a whole because, surprise, surprise, it's the internet. So, isn't it kind of fair to say that at least 70% of the information that the world gets on a day in and day out basis could be the fun term fan made? So that way you're literally learning this information, whether it's fact or fiction, from other individuals who may or may not have, looked deeper into the information they're posting.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously loads of stuff that appears on the mainstream media every day that, you know, people just take in. And there's obviously all the stuff that appears on the internet, Facebook, and all the other countless sites that, you know, all this conspiracy stuff comes into play. And, you know, sometimes it belittles, you know, fact and distracts you. But even so, it's like Brad said, if you're thinking, you know, objectively, you'll look, you know, you've got to sort of, you know, but yeah, it's definitely changed everything, absolutely everything, absolutely everything.
I'll say, before Brad brings he brings his answer in on that half of the question, is I was born in '90, so not technology rather, but the internet didn't drop till early '90s to mid '90s, if not later. And then we all know the infamous 2K crash, where everything dropped in 2000. They called it the internet bug. But I mean, it's just so crazy watching it unfold. A little bit of a side note too that you both would find interesting. They have officially made walking robots.
Oh yeah.
And Tesla is talking about making a full-fledged body robot in the next couple of years, if I read the information correctly. I'm not saying I did, but if you're curious, definitely research it. Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to very briefly encapsulate, the whole thing with editing information. The whole thing, I remember, growing up, I always heard, oh, big brother, it's the government, big brother. There's an irony in there, though, especially with the internet and being able to edit information and to be able to sway that information to whatever direction any individual or group wants to sway the information towards. Big brother has become us. We are big brother. We are big brother individually. We are big brother in groups. We are big brother in terms of, the alignments that we are trying to push in terms of our understanding of, in terms of what we want to push onto others.
I mean, we've become everything's being run by AI now, and like everything, and we have become that in itself. We've become the feeders to give it the information it needs to function without us. Very dangerous path to be going down. We're all freely giving our, our ambitions, our wants, our desires, and AI is understanding that and is learning and is growing, and the banking systems and everything else is relying on it heavily. The military systems, every single aspect of it is now, but we are, giving it the tools it needs to understand, which is very, very scary. Our imaginations can create whatever we want. We've seen that since the invention of the PC, and now us holding Star Trek phones in our hands better than. So we think these things, but are they necessarily good?
It's true. It's true. In fact, I've noticed the way that information is is actually imparted now. It's almost like dropped. It's almost just dropped, in social media. And then they let us take care of the rest. They let us, freaking fight over it and go crazy over it. And so almost divide and conquer in nature, isn't that? It's kind of just like, yeah, let's just drop shit on them and let them just, tear each other apart. And while they're busy doing that, then shit's going on. Big money's changing hand behind the scenes. Power's changing.
Well, it's like we touched on earlier. Not only is it shifting in power, shifting in the government, shifting in politics, whatever the case may be, but you also got to think survival of the fittest. They have so many people that are coming out with these brain dead trends, and it's like, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but like a couple years back, we had people in their early 20s and late teens eating Tide Pods. I mean, so you gotta. It's almost kind of like, are they intentionally throwing these curveballs to the world to see who's dumb enough to let it bite the bullet, so to speak, or is it just
They've twisted sexuality so much. When I was a child, there was like one gay that I knew of in the UK. His name was Quentin Crisp. And the media and the television, the cartoons even now, it's just twisting the imagination. Now you've got people that want to be aliens and wow.
Right now, only because I feel like that would be an excellent topic, and I will definitely run that to John, and he'll give me a yay or a nay on it, but I'm pretty sure like we'll just have to be a little bit cautious because of the prior. So, gentlemen, viewers, this has been Let's Talk Conspiracy Theories. It's been an outrageous ride, man. We've taken everything, over the past, I think we threw out a handful of topics. Make sure that check us out everywhere. YouTube. I'm also pushing this on my audio podcast. It's called the Pine Skull Project. It's available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever your podcasts are found. Keith Dixon, once again, Brad and his awesome Italian last name. Please make sure you check this out. Like, comment, subscribe. You'll find me on social media, unfortunately. J Thompson 29 for my Facebook and my YouTube. You can find John Finch, the co-host / host, at John Finch out Fox Studio. Keith knows him well. They're from the same side of the pond. So, gentlemen, it's been super excellent. I look forward to talking to you both very, very soon. I will talk to you guys later on, man.
Good meeting you both, and let's do it.
Yeah, man, it was good meeting you guys, and for the viewers out there, so long.
Peace out. Go ahead.